Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. It's Drama Monday through Friday into the weekend. The drama has been nonstop, as you guys know, since things in mainstream hip-hop have been heating up ever since Metro Boomin and Future dropped their recent album, We Don't Trust You, which had that Kendrick Screw the Big Three, It's Just Big Me verse on it that has caused everyone to go absolutely ballistic. Fans and haters alike. There was a J. Cole response, and then J. Cole apologized for it, and now it's taken down off streaming. There's way more context I could go over right now in terms of how we got to this point. Rick Ross dropped a trash diss. But what's most important right now in this video, what we're going to go over, because the dust on all of this has not settled yet, is that Drake has come out with his own diss track, his own response to all of this, all the attacks. It's been thrown out there unofficially by his team. It's not on streaming services right now, but people are hearing it on YouTube, hearing it on Twitter. Fans are calling it push-ups, drop and give me 50, which is understandable given the refrains. And going into this diss, into this response, there's three things I want to know. Does it sound good? Is it solid as a song? Are the bars that Drake is lacing into this track, do they work? Do they go at his attackers here effectively? Does he take them down a peg or two? And what he's saying, the content, the substance of his lines, is it actually like reality, or is it him just kind of like living in his own head and bullshitting us? The words he's saying, do they hold up to scrutiny? The first thing I want to get out of the way, because maybe it's the quickest thing to address, is the sound of the song, the quality of the track overall, just by, usual Drake songwriting standards. I think it's good. I think it's solid. Drake's delivery, it sounds engaged. He sounds awake. Clearly, this situation has lit a fire under his ass, and he is just completely locked in. Good beat choice as well. Definitely better than the beat that was on 7 Minute Friggin' Drill. I mean, it's not exactly the most revolutionary trap beat you're ever going to hear, but it's got kind of a mean, eerie overtone to it. And there's nothing about it that's too crazy or attention grabbing that's going to draw your ears away from what Drake is saying. Structurally, I think it's pretty good too. He breaks up everything he says pretty well with this drop and give me 50 refrain. Though I will say, to make an obvious comparison here, is this song as catchy as, let's say, Back to Back? No, not necessarily. But that's not as important as long as the content of Drake's bars leaves a searing burn in their aftermath. Okay, let's start digging into this. Drake coming in hot on the first few bars. Spitting some truth, in my opinion. I could never be nobody's number one fan. Your first number one, I had to put in your hand. You won't ever take no chain off of us. How the fuck you big stepping with a size 7 men's on? Which, I mean, pretty obvious attack there. Like, you're a little guy. I'm bigger than you. You're a tiny man. Height and stature attacks are not the most deadly that are out there, but it's cool that he kind of tied it into the big stepper thing. Okay, the number one fan thing, Genius and many fans allege, is a shot at Future, saying that Drake is a fan of his, which could be true, but the funny thing about that line is that it applies pretty widely across mainstream hip-hop. A feature from Drake or a collaboration with Drake was the first number one or the first major chart elevation for a lot of artists who are popular in rap music today. So to me, it does make sense for Drake to kind of like, serve a lot of these guys with a reminder that we've crossed over in the past, we have collaborated, and it just so happens that many of the most successful, or maybe the most successful moment in your career was tied to me. With that being said, though, I wouldn't attribute all of Future, for example, success to Drake, especially considering like Future is one of the bigger mainstream artists out there who I would actually say kind of has his own sound and stylistic trajectory outside of the Drake bubble. I mean, stylistically and aesthetically, Drake has proven to be a pretty massive force in hip hop over the past 10 years in terms of just like influencing just about everybody's records, everybody's sound. But Future, for better or for worse, because I haven't haven't really loved all of his discography, obviously. He's somebody who is very provably on his own path and isn't necessarily like, taking notes from Drake. If we were actually to do a big three of like, the main sounds or pathways, lanes in mainstream hip hop that we hear today, and it wasn't going to be Drake, Kendrick, Cole, should be something more like Drake, Kendrick, Future, or Travis Scott. Someone who's going to come in and represent like that, different, drugged out kind of psychedelic trap wing of the genre. And there are numerous points in Drake's career where he absolutely has taken stylistic notes from Future. And while Drake does make a point here, I wouldn't necessarily argue that making another artist sound more marketable is like a flex per se. The image he portrays in this other bar a bit further down, though, is very funny. My picture on the wall when y'all cook up. I feel like Drake is making a valid point here because there is a certain sort of obsession that is inadvertently being portrayed by everybody going at him right now in the fashion that they are. Because even if Metro, Future, and whoever else comes out of the woodwork, even if they are making valid points about Drake and the quality of his music and so on and so forth, the fact that all of you are going at him all at once in the way that you are, and that it's so orchestrated, it is giving obsession. And look, I know Drake can be conceited. I know he can be egotistical. I know he can be a dick. That's not my personal experience, as, that guy in the past has sent me cookie recipes. He's only ever been nice to me. But at the end of the day, like, even with all of his subs, all of his weird behavior here and there, he's just a guy. Like, does dissing him or taking him down a peg really necessitate clicking up and being like, yeah, you're gonna do this, and then I'm gonna put out this other song? Yeah, it's just a little schoolyard. It really is. In this next couple of bars, Drake throws out the drop and give me 50 thing, but he's really kind of going at the numbers behind the scenes in the contracts of either Kendrick or maybe even some of the other artists who are attacking him here, saying that they're allegedly giving up 50% of their profits, of their whatever, in the money that they're making off of their records, off of their songs, to their labels, to the music industry, which honestly is kind of a harder pill to swallow than, any numbers comparison we could be doing here. Because if you're losing that sort of money to your label in the process of making music, no matter what the numbers you're doing are, you're just kind of like stuck on a treadmill. A few bars later, he's even challenging for a contract reveal. And the way you do in splits, bitch, your pants might rip. These next couple of bars, though, I'm not sure if I vibe with too much. It kind of seems like a pot calling the kettle black kind of situation, with Drake mocking Kendrick for doing verses for Taylor Swift and Maroon 5. Wait a second. Like, if there's any dude in hip hop who is like desperately looking for a pop crossover and looking for ways to stay in the hip hop lane stylistically, but aesthetically appeal to listeners of pop and pop audiences, it is you. On top of that, weren't you also like lip syncing to Bad Blood in the workout? Like, was that not a crossover? Was that not promo? I mean, at least in the case of Kendrick, he has the versatility and the ability to do a little bit of a pop appearance, do an appearance on a record where he appeals to a larger, more massive audience. But when he goes back into album mode, he's back in kind of pure Kendrick territory. He's going for that artistry. He's hitting us with that depth. Meanwhile, much of what Drake is giving us, regardless of if it's a feature or if it's an album, it's surface level mode. It's in middle brow mode. So to me, this set of bars is just kind of silly and hypocritical, calling him a pipsqueak again, and then basically saying there are many other artists in the music industry, not just Drake, that have Kendrick totally washed. Artists like 21 Savage, Travis, artists on his own label like SZA. I think this bit of wordplay to follow is pretty clever as well, as many know. TDE is just a sub of Interscope Records. Interscope, Kendrick's Inescope. And then from here, Drake addresses the fact that he's being attacked so widely by everybody, and actually gives a really solid retort to the Prince outlived Mike Jack line, with him kind of starting here. Big difference between Mike then and Mike now. And then, what's a prince to a king? He's a son. Although, once again, get more love in the city that you from, which I think is also kind of fudging the numbers a bit. That's kind of a difficult thing to quantify, especially when you're talking about artists who are at this huge point of success. And let's not also forget that footage of Drake getting booed at Camp Flognaw. So, I mean, it's not like Drake is just kind of universally beloved here. Drake kind of switches sights, changes gears here to follow. And while I don't think this bar here is necessarily super cutting in terms of wordplay or Drake digging anything up, him kind of jumping to the side just to say, Metro, shut your ass up and just get on the drums. It's kind of hilarious. It's just like dismissive in a way that makes it feel like Drake sees him as like not even worthy of dismantling. It's just like, what are you doing? This is such a waste of time. This is ridiculous. Drake seemingly goes at Abel the Weeknd as well and his team, saying a few different things, but I think most notably that he kind of represents the six in the area that he's from in Toronto better than he does. And then finishing things off in the first verse, he is focusing more on Metro, on Future, on Kendrick, saying these threats. He's throwing them off. He's casting them aside. No chains are getting snatched. I'm going to have my own bodyguards too. And with the baby mom mentions, he also kind of throws out reminders that I know things about you guys. You know things about me. There's skeletons in your closets as well. Then there's a second verse because Drake has his work cut out for him and more people to address. Rick Ross, who, as I said earlier, jumped into this whole thing and has his own trash diss out there where he's just obsessing over Drake's nose and calling him white. He pretty much casts Ross off in the same way he does everyone else. I've given you hits. And then Drake tries to provide more context for what he thinks about this whole beef to begin with. He does not care what Cole thinks about how great Kendrick is. Drake, not impressed, does not care. And he claims that this stuff, this tension, this beef didn't just come out of nowhere. It's been brewing up, which if you've been paying attention, yes, it very much has. But who started feeling some type of way first over what other person is unclear, and the answers to that will most likely vary depending on who you're talking to. I mean, he finishes things off with valid reminders that numbers-wise, these other guys are not creeping up. They're not catching up. Drake is still on top. Your numbers are not my numbers. Your success is not my success. And you're giving 50% of your shit away to the label. And yeah, that's pretty much the track. That's pretty much the diss. That's the response. And I'll say overall, I liked it. I think it's a solid response. I think it's respectable. I mean, it's not a complete dismantling of anybody that Drake was addressing. However, when you consider what Kendrick was saying on Like That, I mean, that track wasn't even a complete dismantling of Drake. It was a shot. It was an attack, a surface level one that had some good wordplay and some solid bars in it, some good writing, but like it wasn't a complete takedown of Drake from top to bottom. So the level of detail and aggression Drake showed here, it just kind of elevated things just a bit. Just a touch. He responded in kind and with a little bit extra, and also frankly did super well considering he had many, many people to fire back at in this one shot. I mean, it's hard enough to make a diss track against one single guy, and Drake's got to talk about 4, 3, 5, 6, 7 different dudes on a couple of verses. Once again, there were a few instances in the bars here where I think Drake, is kind of just being a legend in his own mind, building himself up a bit too much or being slightly hypocritical, but his delusions through this track, for the most part, remained at a minimum. He had some witty replies, he stood on his own 2 feet, and made lemonade with the lemons he had been given. Now, moving on from here, what are we likely to see? I mean, considering how much he mentions Kendrick literally by name throughout this track, we're most likely going to see a reply from him down the road, very soon maybe. Considering the anger and bitterness Kendrick entered into this whole thing to begin with, and now he finally has a Drake response, a Drake reply, he's likely to go full throttle from here with him. Meanwhile, Metro, I don't think he has any reason at this point, especially since he's gotten this reply, to stop going at Drizzy right now. But most likely how that's going to play out into the future, as we've seen recently with A$AP Rocky and The Weeknd, he's probably going to continue inflaming things just through like proxies, just dragging other artists out of the woodwork to have them diss Drake on his behalf, which there's any number of artists he can probably put up to doing that at this point with his production. So, I mean, as of right now, I'm not sure if I see this ending with another couple of tracks, honestly. I've been going on too long, though. I have to leave it there because most likely this is not going to be the last video I'm making on this topic. There's going to be more to say, more responses, more everything, and I will address it as it comes out. But again, overall, I think this Drake response, it's solid. What do you guys think about this track? Down in the comments, let me know. You're the best. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Drake, push-ups, forever.